The grand court of the Viuri Empire was filled with light, sound, and tension. Tall alien nobles in shimmering robes stood in rows, their golden eyes watching every movement inside the vast chamber. The walls were carved with ancient symbols, glowing softly with energy. Every step on the polished stone floor echoed, carrying weight in this place where only the strongest dared to speak. At the center of the hall, the throne of the Viuri shone like a mountain of crystal. The emperor sat upon it, silent and still, his presence as heavy as a storm. Beside him stood the young princess, Lyra. She was graceful, her silver hair catching the glow of the hall, her tall figure calm yet filled with curiosity. She was still learning her role, still seeking to understand the many visitors who came before the empire. On this day, a new figure entered the court. His name was Aaron. He was human, a diplomat from Earth. Unlike the towering Viuri, he seemed small, his frame thin compared to their powerful bodies. His steps were steady, yet his size and plain clothing made some of the nobles smirk with disbelief. They had seen many envoys from different worlds, but few looked as fragile as this man. Still, Aaron did not lower his head. His eyes remained firm as he walked through the long path toward the throne. The weight of hundreds of alien eyes upon him would have broken many, but he moved as if each step was chosen carefully. His boots tapped the floor, and with each sound, he reminded the hall that he was not afraid. The nobles whispered among themselves. Some laughed quietly. Others wondered why a human had been sent here, of all places. Humans were a young race in the stars, barely known, and often dismissed as weak. Yet Aaron walked forward without hesitation, his shoulders straight, his breathing steady. When he reached the center of the court, he bowed deeply to the emperor, then raised his head. His voice was clear when he spoke. "Great Emperor of the Viuri, I come from Earth with respect and with hope. My people seek peace, not conquest. We offer friendship, not fear. And we believe that together, we can share knowledge and build a future stronger than any one race alone." The words were simple, but the hall grew quiet. Many expected nervous stammering or desperate flattery, but instead they heard calm strength. Aaron did not shout or try to force attention. His confidence came from his steady tone, his belief that his words carried truth. Princess Lyra tilted her head slightly, her golden eyes studying him. She had met envoys from powerful races before, each one loud in their pride, boasting of weapons or riches. This human, however, spoke differently. He did not act like a conqueror or a servant. He spoke as an equal. It was strange, and it drew her curiosity. A noble stepped forward, his voice sharp. "You speak of peace, human. But what can your kind offer? You are small. You are fragile. What place do you have among empires that have ruled for thousands of years?" The hall murmured with agreement. Many nodded, expecting the human to shrink back in shame. But Aaron lifted his gaze, and his voice carried across the chamber. "You are right," he said firmly. "We are smaller than you. We do not have the strength of your armies or the age of your empire. But strength is not only in size, nor in power. Strength is also in spirit. We survived on a world of storms and fire. We endured hunger and war, yet we still reached the stars. That is the strength of humanity. We may be fragile in body, but we are not fragile in will." The court grew still. His words struck differently than expected. There was no arrogance, only truth. There was no weakness, only courage. Princess Lyra felt her heart stir. For years, she had heard humans described as insignificant. Yet this man, standing alone before her father's throne, did not seem insignificant at all. His bravery was quiet, but it was sharp. It was the kind of bravery she rarely saw, even among her own people. Another noble scoffed. "Fine words, but words are wind. What can wind do against the storms of the galaxy?" Aaron looked at him and replied, Wind shapes mountains, given time. And time is all we ask for. The court fell silent again. Some nobles frowned, displeased. Others looked at him with new interest. The emperor did not speak, only raised one hand, signaling silence. His eyes, ancient and unreadable, rested on the human. The meaning of his silence was unknown, but the court obeyed. The princess continued to watch. She did not speak, for it was not her place, but her thoughts were alive with questions. Why did this human seem so certain? Why did his words carry such weight, even when his body seemed so weak? For the first time in her life, Princess Lyra felt the beginning of something she had never expected. She felt respect for a human. And as Aaron stood alone in the great court of the Viewery, facing hundreds with only his voice and his courage, the first step of a new story had begun. The court of the Viewery Empire had grown quiet after the human diplomat's words. Yet silence in such a place never lasted long. Nobles, generals, and advisors exchanged glances, some impressed, others doubtful, and many eager to test this fragile-looking visitor. To them, words were cheap. Proof was needed. The emperor's voice finally filled the chamber. It was deep, strong, and commanding. Your speech carries strength, human. But strength in words must match strength in truth. My council will question you. If your answers prove empty, then your visit will be remembered as nothing. Aaron bowed his head respectfully. I welcome the questions, great emperor. At once, a tall noble stepped forward. His robe was heavy with silver thread, and his sharp golden eyes cut into the human. His name was Lord Veyron, known for his cold tongue and quick temper. You say your people are strong in will, Veyron began, his voice loud enough to shake the hall. But what does your will matter when your bones can be broken with a single strike? What can a weak body achieve in a galaxy ruled by power? Murmurs filled the chamber again. To many, this question was fair. The Viewery were warriors and builders of empires. To them, strength was the foundation of respect. Aaron stood calmly, his hands folded behind his back. His voice was steady. A weak body can endure when guided by a strong mind. It is not muscle alone that carries a people to the stars. It is thought, it is courage, it is the choice to rise again after falling. Lord Veyron smirked. So you claim the mind is stronger than the blade? A bold claim for a race so new to the stars. Aaron answered without pause. It is not a claim. It is a truth my people have lived for thousands of years. When storms destroyed our homes, we built them again. When famine struck, we found ways to share food. When war tore us apart, we searched for peace. That is how humans endure. Not because we are the strongest in body, but because we refuse to surrender. The words rang in the chamber, and some nobles leaned forward with interest. Princess Lyra watched closely. She had heard debates in this hall many times, but this was different. Most envoys bent beneath the pressure of questions. Many spoke too carefully, or too proudly, and lost respect either way. But this human did not bend. His answers came from conviction, not from fear. She found herself listening more closely than she had expected. Another voice cut through the hall. This time it was General Kareth, a battle-scarred warrior who had led fleets into war. His tall figure stood like a mountain of steel, his armor gleaming under the chamber light. Human, Kareth said, his tone rough. You speak of peace. Yet peace is weak without power to defend it. If enemies strike, what do humans have to protect themselves? If your world is attacked, can your words shield you? The hall rumbled with agreement. It was a strong question, one that seemed impossible for the human to answer. Aaron turned his gaze to the general. His eyes held no fear, only quiet resolve. If my world is attacked, we will fight with everything we have. We will fight even when outnumbered. We will fight even when hope is thin. Because peace is not weakness. Peace is the strength to protect life, even when it is easier to destroy it. We do not seek war, but if war finds us, then we will not kneel. His voice grew firmer, though never raised in anger. And if we fall, we rise again. That is what makes us human. The words carried through the court like fire. Some nobles frowned, calling it reckless pride. Others whispered among themselves, uncertain. But Princess Lyra felt her chest tighten. This human spoke of weakness, yet turned it into strength. He admitted to limits, yet declared that limits would not stop his people. She could not deny the strange feeling of respect growing in her. The emperor raised his hand once more, silencing the chamber. His eyes remained locked on the human, unreadable and sharp. You answer with boldness, the emperor said. But boldness can become arrogance. Why should we believe your people are different from those who came before? Many races promise peace. Many speak of courage. Few remain true when tested. The challenge hung heavy in the air. Aaron bowed slightly. I do not ask you to believe my words alone, great emperor. I ask for a chance to show them true. Judge humanity not by promises, but by actions. The emperor studied him for a long moment. The hall was silent, every noble waiting for the decision. Then the emperor nodded slowly. So be it. You will be tested. The trial of fire will judge your resolve. Gasps spread across the court. Nobles whispered in shock. The trial of fire was no simple test. It was a challenge faced only by the bravest warriors of the Viewery. To send a human into it was almost unthinkable. Princess Lyra's eyes widened. For the first time, worry touched her calm face. She looked at the human, expecting him to falter, to retreat. But Aaron did not move. His face was calm, his eyes steady. He gave a small nod. If that is the way, then I accept. The court erupted in disbelief. Some laughed, others shook their heads, and a few whispered with new admiration. The princess felt her heart beat faster. This human was either a fool or the bravest envoy she had ever seen. And deep inside, Lyra could not help but wonder which truth it was. The news of the emperor's decision spread quickly through the palace. Servants whispered in the corridors, guards spoke in low tones, and nobles argued in the shadows. A human, fragile in body, was to face the trial of fire. Many thought it a death sentence. Some believed it was an insult to the empire's traditions. Others waited with curiosity, wondering if this small envoy might surprise them. Princess Lyra heard every whisper as she walked through the long halls of the palace. Her golden eyes were calm, but her mind was restless. She could not understand why the human had accepted so quickly. Most envoys begged for safety, but this one had stepped forward without hesitation. His voice had been steady, his gaze unshaken. Foolish or fearless, she could not yet decide. The trial of fire was not a game. It was an ancient tradition of the Viewery Empire, a test of courage and will. Warriors who sought honor entered the arena to face beasts brought from distant worlds. It was a place where strength was measured not only by muscle, but by the ability to endure fear itself. Even trained Viewery soldiers sometimes failed. For a human to enter, it seemed impossible. On the morning of the trial, the grand arena roared with sound. Thousands of Viewery citizens filled the stone seats, their cheers rising into the sky. The arena floor was wide and scorched, marked with black scars of fire and battle. Great iron gates lined the walls, and behind them, shadows moved, hiding the creatures that would soon be unleashed. Aaron stood at the center of the arena. He wore no shining armor, no heavy weapon. Instead, the Viewery had given him only a round shield of metal and a simple torch. Compared to the massive weapons of Viewery warriors, it looked like nothing at all. Yet Aaron held the shield firmly in one hand, the torch in the other. His shoulders were straight, his face calm, though his heart beat fast beneath his chest. From the royal balcony above, The emperor and Princess Lyra watched. Nobles stood around them, their golden robes gleaming. Many waited eagerly to see the human fall. Others whispered, wondering if perhaps he might survive longer than expected. The gates rumbled open. The sound shook the ground, and from the dark tunnel stepped a beast unlike anything on earth. It was massive, its body covered in scales that shimmered like burning coal. Its eyes glowed red, and smoke poured from its wide mouth. The creature's claws dug into the stone floor as it moved forward with heavy steps. The crowd roared in excitement. The trial of fire had begun. Aaron tightened his grip on the shield. He knew he could not match the beast in strength. A single strike from its claws could end him. But he had not come to fight with strength. He had come to fight with his mind, with courage, and with will. The beast roared, the sound shaking the air. Then it charged. Its claws slashed down, but Aaron lifted his shield, deflecting the strike. The impact sent him stumbling back, his arm burning with pain. Still, he did not fall. He steadied himself and moved quickly to the side, forcing the beast to turn. The crowd gasped. Few expected the human to withstand even one strike. Aaron's mind raced. He studied the arena, the beast's movements, the way its eyes followed the torch in his hand. He knew fire could be both danger and weapon. Slowly, he began to wave the torch, drawing the creature's attention. The beast growled, its eyes locked on the flames. He led it step by step, backing toward a corner of the arena where black oil had spilled long ago, leaving the stones dark. As the beast lunged again, Aaron rolled aside and thrust the torch against the oil-stained floor. Fire leapt up at once, bright and hot, surrounding the creature's path. The beast roared in rage, thrashing against the flames. Its scales glowed brighter, but its movements grew wild and clumsy. Aaron did not strike recklessly. He stayed low, watching, waiting, using the fire to control the creature's path. The nobles leaned forward, astonished. They had expected the human to panic, to run, to fall quickly. Instead, he used wit where others used force. From the balcony, Princess Lyra gripped the railing. Her heart raced as she watched the human move. His steps were not careless. His choices were sharp, clever, and brave. She could see the pain in his arm, the strain in his body, but still he pressed on. She whispered softly to herself, though no one heard, "He is not afraid." Finally, the beast, blinded by the flames and confused by Aaron's movements, stumbled toward the fire. With a final roar, it collapsed into the burning circle, its strength fading. The arena shook with the sound of its fall. The crowd erupted with shouts of disbelief. Many could not believe what they had seen. A human, armed only with a shield and torch, had outwitted a beast of the trial of fire. Aaron stood, breathing hard, his body trembling with exhaustion. Yet his eyes were steady as he looked up at the royal balcony. He did not smile, nor did he boast. He simply stood with quiet pride, showing that his people's will had carried him through. Princess Lyra felt her chest tighten. She had doubted him, just as the nobles had. But now she knew the truth. This human was not fragile. He was brave. He was clever. And above all, he was unbroken. The emperor's face was unreadable, but his silence carried weight. The nobles argued loudly, but none could deny what they had witnessed. The human had faced the trial of fire and survived. And as the fire slowly died in the arena, a new fire began to burn in the heart of the princess. The fire in the arena still glowed faintly, smoke rising into the sky as silence fell over the crowd. Aaron stood in the center, his chest heaving, his arm aching from the beast's strike. His shield was dented, and his torch had burned low, but he remained on his feet. For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of crackling flames and the murmurs of disbelief from the crowd. Then, without warning, another gate began to rise. The ground shook as heavy chains rattled and iron doors opened. From the shadows, a second beast emerged. It was smaller than the first but faster, its body lean and covered with black fur, its sharp fangs glistening. Its eyes burned like coals, and its claws clicked against the stone floor. Gasps filled the arena. Many had thought the trial complete, but the Emperor had chosen a harsher path. 2 beasts instead of 1. Even seasoned Viore warriors often failed against such odds. Aaron felt his heart sink for a moment, but he did not allow fear to hold him. He tightened his grip on the dented shield, raised the fading torch, and prepared himself again. From the royal balcony, Princess Lyra leaned forward, her golden eyes wide. She could not believe her father had allowed a second beast. The human was already wounded, already pushed beyond reason. Yet even now, he did not flee or fall to his knees. He stood ready, as if his spirit refused to break. The second beast growled, circling him with quick steps. Aaron shifted his weight, his eyes never leaving the creature. He knew his body was slower, weaker. But he also knew his mind was still sharp. He remembered the way he had used fire before, and he searched the arena for anything he could turn into a weapon. The ground was littered with blackened stones, some still hot from the flames. Carefully, Aaron moved backward, placing himself between the beast and a pile of those glowing rocks. The creature, sensing his retreat, lunged forward. Its claws scraped against the shield, pushing him back with raw force. Aaron stumbled but did not fall. The crowd roared with excitement. Some shouted for the beast to finish him. Others began to watch with uneasy respect. Aaron gritted his teeth. He thrust the torch toward the beast's face, forcing it to recoil for a moment. Then, with quick thought, he swung the torch against the pile of heated stones. Sparks leapt into the air, small flames flaring where dry straw had been left behind from past trials. The fire spread quickly, forming another barrier. The beast snarled, pacing around the flames. Aaron used the moment to steady his breath. He knew he could not kill it with strength, but he could force it into mistakes. Step by step, he guided it closer to the wall of fire, using his shield to block its strikes and his torch to drive it back. Each movement cost him. His arm ached, his legs trembled, and sweat ran down his face. Still, he endured. His will pushed him forward when his body begged him to stop. Princess Lyra's hands clenched the railing of the balcony. Her chest tightened with every strike the beast delivered. She could see the human's pain, the exhaustion in his movements, yet she also saw something far stronger than weakness. She saw resolve, a force that could not be crushed by claws or fire. At last, the beast lunged recklessly, blinded by rage. Aaron dropped low, rolled aside, and shoved his shield forward. The creature crashed into the wall of flames, its body twisting as fire engulfed its fur. A roar filled the arena as the beast thrashed, then finally collapsed in silence. The crowd exploded with noise. Some shouted in disbelief, others cheered, while a few remained silent, shaken by what they had witnessed. A human had not only faced one beast, but two, and still stood alive. Aaron dropped to one knee, his torch falling from his hand. His chest heaved, his arms shook, but his eyes remained clear. He raised his head toward the royal balcony, meeting the gaze of the emperor and the princess. The emperor's face was unreadable, but the silence of his stillness carried weight. Around him, nobles argued, some calling Aaron reckless, others calling him brave. But none could deny his victory. Princess Lyra could no longer hide her feelings. Her eyes softened, and for the first time, she felt more than curiosity. She felt admiration. She whispered to herself, "He fights not for glory, but for belief." Aaron rose slowly, using the shield for balance. He did not raise his arms in triumph or boast of his victory. He simply stood, battered but unbroken, a quiet figure of endurance in the heart of the empire. The trial of fire had ended, but its true weight had only begun. For in that arena, before thousands of eyes, the image of humanity had changed. They were no longer seen as fragile creatures. Through one man's courage, they had shown a spirit that could stand beside the greatest of empires. And as the smoke drifted into the sky, Princess Lyra knew that she would never again look at humanity with the same doubt. The human had passed the trial, and his bravery had struck a spark deep within her heart. The trial of fire was over, but its echoes spread far beyond the arena. In the markets of the capital, merchants repeated the tale to curious customers. In the barracks, soldiers spoke of the human who had faced not one beast but two. In the halls of the nobles, arguments broke out. Some said the emperor's test had been too cruel, others claimed the human was reckless, but most agreed on one thing: his courage could not be denied. Aaron himself rested in a quiet chamber of the palace. His wounds were treated by healers, though they looked at him with a mix of disbelief and respect. His arm was wrapped, his shoulder bruised, yet he refused to remain lying down for long. When the healers advised rest, he only smiled faintly and said, "I have already rested enough in my life. Now I must move." Word of his survival reached every corner of the court. Nobles whispered in corridors, their golden robes brushing against the marble floors. Some feared what his presence might mean. If a human could endure the trial of fire, what other surprises might his people bring? Others began to see opportunity. Perhaps alliance with Earth could bring new strength to the empire. Among them all, Princess Lyra remained the most thoughtful. She had watched every moment of the trial, had felt every strike as if it struck her own chest. She could not dismiss the image of Aaron standing in the arena, bloodied but unbroken. It stayed with her long after the fire's smoke had cleared. One evening, as the palace grew quiet, she walked through the gardens. The air was cool, the night sky filled with stars. There, she found Aaron, sitting on a stone bench near the fountain. He was leaning on his shield, not for battle but for balance, his eyes lifted toward the endless sky. For a moment, Lyra hesitated. It was unusual for her to approach an envoy directly. But curiosity overcame caution. She stepped closer, her silver hair catching the starlight. "You should be resting," she said softly. Aaron turned, surprised but calm. "I find rest in looking at the stars," he replied. "They remind me of home." She sat across from him, her golden eyes studying his tired face. "Do you not fear what happened in the arena?" Aaron shook his head slowly. "Fear was there, yes. But fear is only a chain if you let it hold you. I chose to move forward, even with fear beside me." Lyra's gaze lingered on him. She had met warriors who claimed to be fearless, yet their pride was often empty. This man admitted fear, yet turned it into strength. That truth struck her more deeply than any boast. "Why risk your life so willingly?" she asked. "You are a diplomat, not a soldier. No one expected you to face such a trial." Aaron's answer was quiet, but his voice carried conviction. "Because my people needed me to. If I showed weakness, then humanity would remain in your eyes as nothing. If I showed courage, then perhaps you would see us differently. I did not fight only for myself, princess. I fought for the name of my world." Lyra lowered her gaze for a moment, feeling something unfamiliar stir within her. Respect, yes, but also something deeper, something harder to name. She had spent her life surrounded by power and tradition, yet here sat a man who had none of those things, and still he had changed the court with nothing but will. The sound of footsteps interrupted them. A group of nobles approached, their voices sharp. One of them, Lord Veyron, the same noble who had mocked Aaron before, spoke with scorn. "You walk in gardens with the human, princess. Do not let pity cloud your judgment. His survival was luck, nothing more. He is still weak compared to our kind." Aaron stood, though his body ached. He met Veyron's sharp gaze without flinching. "Luck may help once, Lord Veyron, but endurance does not come from luck. It comes from will. The noble sneered but said no more, retreating with his companions. Their whispers faded into the distance. Lyra looked at Aaron again, her eyes softer than before. "You will find many like him here," she said. "Many who doubt you. But I begin to see what they do not. Perhaps your people are not as weak as we believed." Aaron smiled faintly, though it was weary. "I do not ask to be seen as strong. I ask only to be seen as true." The princess rose, her long robe brushing the grass. She looked at him for a long moment before speaking. "Rest, human. The days ahead will test you more than beasts ever could." With that, she left him beneath the stars. But her thoughts did not leave him. That night, as she lay in her chambers, Princess Lyra found herself unable to sleep. She thought of his words, his steady gaze, his unbroken will. She thought of the whispers that spread through the empire, whispers that spoke of change. And she realized, perhaps for the first time, that the future of her people might now be bound to the courage of one human. The palace stood silent in the deep of night, its towers glowing faintly under the light of the moons. Guards patrolled the walls, their spears shining in the darkness. Inside, nobles rested in their chambers, confident that the empire's strength would keep them safe. Yet danger often came when least expected. Princess Lyra stood by her window, unable to sleep. Her thoughts still lingered on the human diplomat. Aaron's words and his courage in the arena had left marks in her mind that she could not ignore. She had seen warriors fight before, but she had never seen anyone risk so much for more than themselves. It troubled her, but it also gave her a strange comfort. Far below, Aaron walked quietly through the palace corridors. His injuries had not fully healed, but he refused to remain still. He often found peace in walking, his thoughts steadying as he moved through the long halls decorated with golden banners. For him, every step was a reminder that he was still alive, still standing for his people. The peace of the night was suddenly broken. A deep rumble echoed through the walls. Then came the sound of shouts, the clash of weapons, and the alarm of horns. The palace shook as explosions rang from the outer gates. Shadows rushed through the halls as guards sprinted to their stations. An attack had begun. Aaron froze for only a moment before he moved toward the sound. His instincts told him danger was already inside. As he rounded a corner, he saw dark figures in armor unlike the Viewerry guards. They moved quickly, blades drawn, their eyes glowing faintly. These were assassins, trained and prepared. The guards clashed with them, but the attackers cut through with deadly precision. Aaron grabbed a fallen spear and ran. His body still ached, but his will was stronger than the pain. He knew at once who the target would be. Not the emperor, surrounded by loyal protectors, but the princess, young, important, and vulnerable. He sprinted through the halls, his breath sharp. Ahead, he found Lyra stepping out of her chamber, confusion in her eyes as the ground shook again. "Princess!" Aaron shouted. "You must move." Before she could answer, two assassins appeared from the shadows. Their blades gleamed as they rushed toward her. Lyra stepped back in shock, but Aaron leapt forward. With the spear in his hands, he blocked the strike of the first assassin, the clash sending a jolt through his arms. He twisted quickly, shoving the second away with his shoulder. "Stay behind me," he said firmly. Lyra's heart raced as she saw him stand between her and death. He was no soldier, no armored warrior, yet he fought as if nothing mattered more than her safety. The assassins struck again. Aaron parried with the spear, his movements clumsy compared to their skill, but filled with determination. A blade grazed his arm, blood spilling, yet he did not fall back. Instead, he pushed forward, forcing them into the narrow hall where their numbers mattered less. "Why do you do this?" Lyra whispered, her voice trembling. "Because it is right," Aaron answered without turning. More assassins appeared at the far end of the hall. Aaron grabbed Lyra's hand. "This way," he said. Together they ran, his body aching with every step, but his grip on her hand strong and steady. They moved through the twisting corridors, the sounds of battle echoing behind them. Guards fought to hold the palace, but enemies slipped through, hunting their path. Aaron led Lyra toward a hidden passage he had noticed earlier in his walks, a narrow stairway that wound down toward the gardens. Yet as they reached the bottom, another assassin blocked their path. Aaron stepped forward, raising the broken spear like a staff. The assassin laughed coldly at the sight of the wounded human, but Aaron did not retreat. With a burst of strength, he lunged, striking with speed born not of training but of will. The assassin stumbled, surprised by the ferocity of the attack. Aaron pressed on, using his body as a shield until the enemy fell. Lyra's eyes widened. She had never seen anyone fight like this. Not with skill, but with unshakable resolve. He fought as if his own life was nothing compared to protecting hers. Finally, they reached the gardens. The cool night air surrounded them, the sound of fountains mixing with distant cries. Guards arrived, rushing to form a shield around the princess. The assassins were being pushed back, their attack failing as reinforcements filled the palace. Aaron sank to one knee, his breath heavy, his arm bleeding. Yet his eyes still searched the shadows, making sure no danger remained near her. Lyra knelt beside him, her hand trembling as she touched his shoulder. "You saved me," she whispered. Aaron gave a faint smile, though his face was pale. It was never a choice. Only what had to be done. Guards lifted him carefully, carrying him to safety. As they moved him away, Lyra walked beside them, her mind filled with emotions she could no longer deny. She had seen many warriors, many nobles, many who claimed honor. But none had shown her the kind of bravery this human carried. That night, as the fires of the attack were extinguished and the palace returned to uneasy silence, the princess sat alone in her chamber. Her thoughts returned again and again to Aaron's words, to the sight of him standing between her and death. She realized then that his courage was not only for his people. It was for anyone who needed it. And it had changed her heart forever. The palace was quiet after the long night of chaos. The smell of smoke still hung in the air, and broken stones littered the courtyards. Guards stood alert at every gate, their eyes sharp and their hands tied around their weapons. Servants moved carefully, their faces pale with fear. Princess Lyra walked slowly through the ruined halls. Her steps echoed softly, and her hands were clasped tightly in front of her. She had not slept. The image of Aaron standing against the assassins filled her thoughts again and again. She could still see his wounds, the blood on his arm, and the determination in his eyes. That morning, the emperor called a great council. Nobles, generals, and high advisors gathered in the throne hall. Long banners hung from the ceiling, though many were torn by the attack. The room was filled with tension, for the attack had proven that enemies lurked even within the empire's walls. Aaron entered with 2 guards at his side. His wounds were bandaged, and his body still weak, but he stood tall. His gaze was steady, his step slow but firm. He stopped at the center of the hall, where all eyes turned toward him. The emperor's voice was deep as he spoke. "The attack failed, but it showed us how dangerous our enemies are. We now face a decision. Shall we strengthen ties with humanity, or shall we turn away, leaving them to their own fate?" The nobles began to argue at once. Some shouted that humans were too weak, pointing out Aaron's injuries. Others said humanity had nothing to offer. A few remained silent, uncertain of what was right. Aaron said nothing. He simply stood, watching them, his face calm. He knew this was not his choice to make. It was theirs. At last, the emperor raised his hand, and silence fell. He turned his gaze to his daughter. "Lyra, you were witness to last night's events. You saw with your own eyes the truth of this human. What do you say? The hall grew silent. Every noble turned toward her. Lyra felt her heart pound in her chest. Her voice would shape the future of both their worlds. She took a step forward, her dress brushing against the marble floor. Her eyes moved across the faces of the nobles, and finally settled on her father. Father, lords, and generals, she began, her voice steady though her hands trembled slightly. I stood in the hall when the assassins came. I saw death rushing toward me. And I saw who stood in its path. It was not one of our own guards. It was not a noble of Vyar. It was him. She turned her eyes toward Aaron. He bowed his head slightly, but said nothing. Lyra continued. He is no soldier, yet he fought with more bravery than any warrior I have seen. He risked his life for mine, though he owed me nothing. He bled so I could live. If this is what humanity is, then they are not weak. They are strong, because they choose to stand even when they are afraid. That is a strength we cannot measure by weapons or armies. A murmur spread across the hall. Some nobles nodded thoughtfully, while others frowned. One general stood, his armor glinting. Princess, his courage may be real, but is one man enough to prove the worth of an entire race? Lyra's gaze did not waver. One man may not represent every human. But courage like his is not born from nothing. It grows from the heart of a people. If one can show it, then many can. And if we turn away from such allies, we turn away from hope itself. Her words echoed in the hall. Even those who doubted grew silent. The emperor sat in thought for a long moment. Then he rose, his robes flowing around him. The choice is clear. Humanity has proven its worth not through conquest, but through bravery. We shall offer alliance. The hall erupted in voices, some cheering, others protesting. But the emperor's word was final. Aaron finally spoke, his voice calm but filled with emotion. On behalf of my people, I thank you. We do not seek to rule, only to live in peace. And if ever your empire faces danger, know that humanity will stand beside you. Lyra looked at him then, and for the first time, she allowed herself to smile. It was a quiet smile, but full of meaning. When the council ended, and the nobles departed, Lyra walked beside Aaron in the quiet corridors. The sunlight streamed through the high windows, casting long beams across the floor. You changed their hearts today, Aaron said softly. Lyra shook her head. No. You did. I only spoke what I saw. It was your courage that opened their eyes. Aaron paused, his hand resting against the bandages on his arm. Courage is not mine alone. Sometimes it only shows when someone is worth protecting. Her steps slowed. She looked at him, her eyes thoughtful, her heart beating faster. She knew now that the bond between their worlds was more than politics. It was built on something deeper, something born in the fire of danger and the light of trust. That night, when the stars filled the sky, the people of the palace spoke of the new alliance. But in the quiet of her chamber, Lyra thought not only of her people's future, but of the human who had changed it all. And in the silence of the stars, humanity's place among them had just begun.